Before I get into the topic of this video today, I just wanted to ask you guys to post in the comment section below the one word that you think best describes the federal Liberal Party under the leadership of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. I already know a lot of people are probably going to say things like corrupt, incompetent, socialistic, or maybe even evil, but the one word I couldn't get out of my head watching this clip from a CBC interview was contempt. The Liberals clearly have contempt for Canadians. I don't think they hate Canadians because that would imply they actually think about Canadians. I just don't think that they think about Canadians at all. How they're doing, is unemployment high? Are people going bankrupt? Are they hungry? They don't care. They'll put lip service towards it every once in a while, but 8 years of making things worse shows that they just have contempt. They don't care about you. They're pushing forward their priorities and their interests, and they'll say they care about you, but for the most part, they don't really think about you. And this is the definition of contempt, and I think it fits very well. The feeling that a person or thing is beneath consideration, worthless or deserving scorn. And the quote here is, he showed his contempt for his job by doing it very badly, which I think actually it perfectly sums up the Liberal Party on most days. But this interview from the CBC with Small Business Minister Rechie Valdez shows that she doesn't care if she's driving away family doctors with the Liberals' new changes to capital gains inclusion rates. And this is why capital gains inclusion rates are really, really important. Yes, the two-thirds inclusion rate up from the 50% only applies if you make more than $250,000 in a year in capital gains. But you have to remember, people like family doctors don't work for large corporations. They don't work for the government. They don't have pensions. Their entire retirement is based off of them putting money in the stock market, investing in properties and selling them, and that's how they're going to live after they retire. And so raising the capital gains inclusion rate from 50% to two-thirds, by the end of this person's career, there are very likely years where they might make more than $250,000 in gains, especially if they purchase property. And a lot of these people might leave Canada because it's not worth it. The Liberals are coming after their wealth, so they better run away fast, sell all their assets, and move somewhere cheap in the United States where you can actually afford a home. But anyways, here is this interview clip, and I think it's just mesmerizing how little she seems to care. She's like, well, who cares if the family doctors leave? We'll just hire new ones. We'll just get people from overseas. We'll just have foreigners take their jobs. And before I bring this up, actually, I always hate the narratives that you just think immigrants are here to take our jobs, but they're jobs that Canadians aren't working. Canadians definitely were working as family doctors. And just because someone from overseas is willing to do it for cheaper doesn't mean it's right to set up a system in such a way where that person's the only person willing to do the job. Canadians will do any job. If you raise taxes on them, regulations, you make it harder to work those jobs, a lot of people will go for jobs elsewhere. Just because someone who's from a war system where the government's more corrupt, the economy's less free, is willing to work a job for barely anything, doesn't mean that that is like the fair wage for that job. But the Liberals, through mass immigration, have caused housing prices to skyrocket and wages to plummet. Anyways, here is this interview with her. I'll try and move through it pretty fast.
Be affected by the new capital gains inclusion, but if their corporate structure is such that they're relying on corporate investments to pay for their future and their retirement, they're going to be hit. And that in a country that's already struggling to have enough family doctors, this creates a disincentive for some of them to work in Canada.
We recognize that, but one of the things that we will continue to do is encourage foreign credential recognition to help we know that coming out of the pandemic, our healthcare has really been hampered and there's a really challenge with labor, but the investments we made with foreign credentialing, we've already made a significant investment in previous budgets, and in this year we've topped that up, and we will continue to invest to ensure we're encouraging bringing.
What is this just pablum coming out of her mouth? She even just acknowledged, yeah, we're pushing away family doctors into the United States or to other countries overseas so they can retire and actually, be able to live for the rest of their lives in decent comfort because, they actually worked a tougher job. And being a family doctor in Canada is super hard. You are capped at how much you can charge for a visit. And so to actually make 6 figures in a year, these family doctors sometimes have to see like 15, 20 people in a day. It's nuts. And then they have to pay staff members. They have to, pay nurses to assist them. They have to have the infrastructure of an actual building to operate out of or some sort of office building. They have to have a waiting room, all of this stuff. It's difficult to be a family doctor in Canada. And she just breezily is saying like, oh yes, we recognize that we might be forcing people out of the country, but don't worry, we are bringing people in to serve us and people who are not going to make much money doing it because we've made it so impossible to actually save money as a family doctor. These people just have contempt for Canadians, and their mass immigration plans and policies demonstrate that fully. They really don't care if things are comfortable for Canadian citizens. They care about people who are not citizens first. That is why there are so many extra benefit programs. There are so many extra, little entitlements that new Canadians, as well as people who just illegally cross the border, get, that our veterans don't get, that working Canadians don't get. And all along the way, they're making it so much more expensive. And the thing is, it's not even good for the new immigrants. They're effectively tricking them to come to this country, pretending it's a land of opportunity when housing is impossible to find, that wages are super low, and there are lineups around like restaurants of people applying for a single job. That is how bad it is. And then I have the other day someone saying, this literally happened at the door since I was door knocking. Shameless plug. I'm Wyatt Claypool, and I'm running for the Calgary Signal Hill Conservative Party nomination. If you live in this area of Calgary, buy a federal Conservative membership and check out my website, wyattclaypool.com. Anyways, sorry, shameless plug. But I was talking to a lady at the door. I said, you know that like the unemployment rate right now is like 6.3, 6.1%. She's like, that's not that high. I'm like, well, yeah. Well, actually, lowest employment rate's usually around 3. So we have 3% extra unemployment rate over what we naturally see in the economy. But that 6.1% is actually suppressed because there's so many people who don't even look for jobs anymore. Look at the jobs report from January. The only places that are hiring are the government and government subsidized industries. Oil and gas is losing people. Manufacturing is losing people. Tons of other technical fields are losing people because the Liberals are taxing them to death. And every time they tax more people to death, they leave the country or they just stop working and they aren't contributing any more tax revenue. The Liberals then raise money and they go after the super rich. These people are scum. These people are going after every little bit of wealth they can find. The funny thing is that if they actually lowered taxes, if they lowered capital gains inclusion rates, if they lowered corporate taxes, they got rid of the carbon tax especially, the economy would actually boom to the point that they would make more tax revenues just by like taking their boot off people's necks. People would be more willing to work. People wouldn't feel like they have to hide money away overseas because of how much the government is gouging them. People would be contributing more. But the Liberals don't actually care about that. They just don't like people who have wealth. They don't like people who are successful. They're going after anyone who has success, and they're ensuring that if you're not quite successful yet, that you'll never be successful. I've played this in another video, but it reminds me so much of it. This clip of Margaret Thatcher talking about the left-wing mentality towards wealth.
What the honourable member is saying is that he would rather the poor were poorer, provided the rich were less rich. That way you will never create the wealth for better social services as we have. And what a policy! Yes, he would rather have the poor poorer, provided the rich were less rich. That is the Liberal policy. Yes, it came out, he didn't intend it to.
Yeah, it perfectly describes the way the Liberals are behaving right now. Who cares who we're hurting? We have an agenda, and we're pushing it forward. They have contempt for you as a Canadian. They don't even think about you. That's how little they like you. They just sort of, you're just some, meat sack out there who's trying to live their life that they could tax. And past that relationship that you have with the government, they could care less. Doesn't matter how many policies they roll out trying to help you. They know the policies aren't going to work. Do you think that they were stupid enough to not think that their universal dental plan was going to fail? That the $10 a day childcare benefit, childcare plan was going to fail? They knew those were going to fail. You can't just undershoot service and product providers and say that, well, you're going to clean people's teeth for less money than you would ever accept. They're just not going to sign up for the program. The $10 a day childcare is a failure because nobody signed up for it, barely. No providers actually want to get involved in that program because the government hasn't even given enough money to subsidize that $10 payment that the parents are making. Because $10 is not enough to raise a kid on, obviously, or to be able to watch someone's children. And so the government was supposed to kick in extra money, and the repayment plans are horrible. So in Calgary, my city, nobody is actually getting involved. And now the changes the city are making to both property taxes as well as trying to densify the city, it's going to shoot up people's property taxes even more. So these daycare centers are definitely not going to survive, especially the ones around the downtown core. They don't care. They have contempt for you. They have a big government agenda, and they are totally fine bowling over you because if you get in their way, well, then you're probably just some rightist extremist that they're going to attack for having met with Pierre Poilievre because they didn't like the carbon tax, and we saw like somebody like a tiny diagolon flag scribbled in Sharpie on a door. That means that they're all terrible people and the police should come probably with horses and run them over. These people are just nasty. They don't act. I can't keep saying they don't care about you, but they don't care about you at all. And hopefully they lose. The new polling showing that they're going to get clobbered. This is a poll where the Liberals are only down by 19 points, but there's two other polls where they're down by 20 points. It's getting worse. There's no way that the Liberals are going to be able to claw their way back there, because it doesn't matter what benefits they pass, what they do. Canadians have a strong feeling that these people don't want them to get ahead. They don't want them to build a family. That's why they want smaller housing units than ever. They just want to bring in new people so that they can artificially pump the GDP to pretend that we have real growth and we're not just simply throwing more warm bodies into the country. And that's what's causing our GDP to technically rise. And that's not even counting for inflation. But yeah, it's stupid. Anyways, that should be it for me today, guys. Anyways, again, I'm running for the Calgary Signal Hill federal nomination. It's on the west side of Calgary. It's technically in the southwest, a little bit of it's in the northwest, but basically straight west on the west side of the city. This is where it is. Buy membership if you live here. Vote for me in the nomination. Again, website, WyattClaypool.com. And if you want to support myself, the National Telegraph's legal fund, the Give, Send, Go link is also in the description below. We are $29,000 deep in fighting back against a Chinese billionaire developer suing us for defamation that he has not proven. And in over 2 years of this court case going forward, it started back in December of 21, he has not actually submitted any evidence that we said anything wrong. In fact, in the deposition that they did on me, which went fantastic for me, they just basically farted around asking me irrelevant questions. They asked me for 16 different undertaking points that I had to meet of more information they wanted. It was all nonsense like, well, how many views did the article get? How many times did it get shared on X or Facebook or whatever? Stuff that didn't matter because it wasn't defamatory, so they can't be mad at our guest writer for merely citing a Globe and Mail article about this guy. That's literally it. They're suing us because we hyperlinked to a Globe and Mail article about him, which he never sued Globe and Mail or evidently, because in our deposition of him, we only asked him for like one or two things. One of them was, did you sue the Globe and Mail over the article they wrote about you, Ted? And they couldn't say yes. And you can't sue somebody over repeating something that another website wrote about. They even contacted him. They did a massive investigation. It was a really long article by Robert Fife and Stephen Chase. Never sued them, but he's going to sue us because he thought he could intimidate a 22-year-old into giving him a fake apology, or at least this is my opinion of what he's doing, in order so that he can wave it around Neville Chamberlain style, pretending that every negative thing ever said about him is obviously fake. Look, I intimidated a 22-year-old who's going to university and having to work a liquor store job to pay for everything. I got him to give us a fake apology. We don't give people fake apologies, so that's why we're still fighting him, and hopefully we'll get all of our costs back by winning this case, but it would really help if you could donate to that Give, Send, Go link in the description below. Have a great day, everyone. You're awesome.